We play that for the wonderful Frank Worthington, who passed last week. And you know, what's interesting when something like Frank passes is there's almost a communal feeling of somebody that's quite special to the game, a character.
Correct.
And he was an Elvis fanatic, and apparently could sing like him brilliantly as well.
He did. Apparently, he stood on. There's a great. If you've probably seen it now because he'd been posted on social media. Those old Q&As that they used to do in Shoot magazine.
Yes.
And there's a focus on Frank Worthington in his Bolton days. And you go through all the list, and one of them is who would you most like to meet? Priscilla Presley.
Yeah.
Favourite actors: Elvis, Bill Maynard, and Robert Mitchum.
Love it.
Favourite musician, obvious, is Elvis. My favourite bit as well, car that he was currently driving at that time as well, Triumph Dolomite.
Oh,
what my mate Terry had. Gunmetal grey Triumph Dolomite. That was but that's a flash car. But Frank, there's this whole thing, John, of there was a great book by Rob Steen and Deadpan Films made a series about football Mavericks.
That's right.
And that's become
great,
like the adopted name. But it is this rock and roll thing about them which is so important. It's where what they're doing is they're brilliant at their job.
Yeah.
But when they're not doing their job, they're not necessarily great pros.
No.
Is the bit I think that we like, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that certainly in England, you've got this thing where, you know, there's a feeling that, and I don't know how true this is, that you tend to go for the more dependable, solid player, and what we now call football mavericks, like your Rodney Marshes and your Frank Worthingtons and your Alan Hudsons, are overlooked at international level.
Yes,
because they don't track back, basically, do they?
Yeah,
you know, but they have
significantly less caps for those fellas.
Yeah, and that's what has been the great dilemma for the English football fan: is how do you do what you managed to do with Gaza in '90, where you can take a player who's got that great creative spark, but sometimes will not do the jobs.
And he very much counts in this conversation.
Yeah, he does.
Plus, of course, arguably just as importantly, but then again, somebody who wasn't necessarily extravagant away from the field of play. 5th anniversary of the passing of Johan Cruyff, isn't it?
Well, I always remember.
In the week.
And listen, text us in about this, 81089, and tweet us at talkSPORT about the footballers that you love, the Mavericks, you know, because we described on air Johan Cruyff as the David Bowie of football.
Yes.
And I got a great text from Noel Gallagher saying, that's perfect. That is the perfect summation of what he is to football, because he's had this huge effect on all football, not just as a player, but as a coach as well. He changed football philosophy almost, a bit like Bowie did with music.
Quite.
His
influence
is incalculable.
It's the physical resemblance as well.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we know full well that Frank Worthington went out of his way to stick a big greasy black quiff on the top of his head and go for the Elvis thing.
He was ridiculously good looking in the mid-70s.
Yeah.
Frank, he had that amazing swept back hair, he had the tan, and he was, like footballers look amazing when you see them.
Pencil moustache, no less, as well, like David Niven or somebody, yeah.
So they've got this whole thing where, and I don't know what I mean, there's something that just appeals to us. The great one of the late sort of Forest team of the late 70s, the club, John Robertson,
right,
a very unlikely looking footballer. Hugely loved by Forest fans. I mean, he's always voted their favourite player. But a character as well. Well known on the city, loves a sing-song, likes a pint, could really play, and is just loved in a way that you think, wow, you know, you see people just see him in the street and they go, Robbo. I think something appeals to us, those Mavericks, doesn't it?
And it's coach's ability to harness them,
like
or at least
did.
give them a long lead.
Yeah.
Famously, when I was covering the NBA and we were down in Salt Lake City and we was covering the series between the Utah Jazz and Chicago Bulls, Dennis Rodman went across state lines so he could play. So he's up all night playing poker at a casino, and the coach was talking to him about it. He said, "Yeah, that's right. There's no point in me trying to pin Dennis Rodman into a hotel room.
No,
this is what he needs to go and do." And he comes out and he's the best player in the next game.
It's a bit like Ferguson talks about, or they talk about Ferguson's relationship with Cantona, and you think to yourself, well, that is great management, because if a player is unmanageable, as they say, and he's gone to different clubs, and the manager almost has to go, look, I can't have him in the team because it upsets the team dynamic, and other players quite rightly go, well, he doesn't train, blah, blah, blah. A truly, truly great manager goes, right, I can not only manage him in the team, but manage how the rest of the team react to him. And I always remember somebody saying to me that Stan Collymore, for argument's sake, Frank Clark says a great thing where Stuart Pearce, the old pro, comes in and goes, I'll have him because he scores goals for us. Yeah. And he said, once I got that dynamic right, I knew Stan was in the right team for him, because there was no resentment to that. Because Stan was going to be Stan, but he had the players around him who were going to go, okay, we accept the eccentricities of Stan, Because what a player.
But it's a delicate line they have to walk because Ferguson famously has had those kind of footballs before and had to get them out of the club.
Absolutely.
When it's kind of crossed the line.
McGrath, Whiteside, and he kept Brian Robson. He had to say, I had to
Paul
split them up.
Was another one. And I was thinking of, who are these guys? I guess Roy Keane has kind of, even in his dotage, has become a little bit more the rock and roll footballer. Plus also Fergal Sharkey. He's basically that's his lookalike. So, and they say,
I was thinking then, Fergal Sharkey, what did he play for?
Exactly, that's right. Played for the Undertones.
Yeah,
but he
Undertones United. Yeah.
But and I think that's what he reminds me of.
Yes.
And because the other one of the great, and he spoke to us recently about Kenny Lynch, Rodney Marsh, who of course is living the rock and roll lifestyle now, out on the West Coast and still chatting about football, and always reminds me of Adam Faith, but in the Budgie years. So if you ever used to watch that old series Budgie,
I did, yeah.
And there was this blonde, he had his brilliant blonde feather cut, and he was always great turnout. And Rodney Marsh, he had that haircut for ages, loved the disco, but of course, again, another footballer whose sort of career, he basically meandered around a few football clubs.
Yes.
And famously, I think, he told us it was Malcolm Allison was in charge of the West Ham youth team, and he could keep two inside forwards, or one inside forward from the two options that he had.
Yeah.
Rodney Marsh, the other one was Trevor Brooking.
Yes.
Trevor Brooking, straight as a die.
Yeah.
Creases in his socks.
100% professional.
He was the one he kept. And Rodney Marsh had this kind of floating career.
We mentioned rugby earlier on. They call him the king, Barry John in Wales terms. Retired when he was 26. Looked like a slim rock star. Let's call him the George Best of rugby.
Yeah.
Loved a pint, Barry. Still,
really?
Well known. Great company. But looked on with a fondness. And my old man, to the day he died, would go, he was the king. And I was a bit like, but Bennett played more games, went to South Africa, did all these things. He was like, but Barry was the king.
Yeah.
And it was, so there's something about those players, the way they carry. Johan Cruyff Johan Cruyff looked like the bass player of Led Zeppelin or something.
He did. He didn't look like it wasn't that lead singer thing. He looks like Bowie from the Heroes video. He looks exactly like Bowie from the Heroes video. But of course he had a great shoe shop.
Yeah.
You find the picture of Johan Cruyff outside his shoe shop, you look at those shoes.
Yes.
They're dynamite. So he did have that in his makeup. And I think there's a modern example, and it's such a difficult life that they have to lead.
Yeah.
I think Paul Pogba has got so much stick.
Yeah.
But he's a kind of free spirit
the youngsters
footballer,
love him. You know what I mean?
And he gets stick because he dares to Instagram himself getting a stripe put in his hair.
Yes.
I mean, that's half an hour of his life, and everyone's thinking, he's come off the rails.
Yes.
Please.
But I think
this is as conservative as it gets in comparison.
And that's the moment when you typically start getting old. It's like this is not music like my day. It's like this is not football like my day. But it's interesting that all the best 11s we've done and all the people we've had in, all clubs have this. Everybody out there listening now, whoever you support, will have a player in your club's history that you go, I loved him. He'd be a little winger, like the pint or whatever. Yeah. And when we talked about Leighton Orient and Crystal Palace, they all go, there's a player on the wing, and I loved him because he just looked like he was having a laugh and enjoying the game and all that. And then of course you come back to the best story of famously picking the can up and drinking it, and everybody remembers that. And then John Robertson having a fag, having a drag of a cigarette when he goes to take a corner. I don't know how true they are, but they become part of football myth, and I think it's because they seem like us on the pitch.
Well, it's a great example. I mean, if West Ham fans kind of live off of the academy, we invented silky football, etc. Billy Bonds, the great heroes. Julian Dix, the great heroes. Not exactly renowned for their finesse.
Defenders.
But
there's that as well.
Funnily enough.
It's Forrest, Stuart Pearce.
There you go.
He's the opposite of John Robertson.
Yeah.
Teak hard left back. So I think we've got both, really. And we like a tough guy and we like a maverick.
But that's the bloke. You still want to meet them down the pub. You want to meet both of them men down the pub.
They don't disappoint them.